Yeah, what's up, guys? Welcome Thursday night. It's funny. I used to get nervous coming on the air and talking, and worried about whether or not I mess up and all that stuff. Been doing this for a while now. I still enjoy it. I still get a little bit nervous, but it's for different reasons now. It's because I spent a lot of time preparing this, and I want you guys to get the full benefit of what I've prepared. So for those of you guys that might not have watched me before, welcome. Chappy is the name. Chap's Fantasy Chats, the show. Thursday nights at 8 on Draft for Upside. Really great up and coming network. Bunch of great guys that support the network, and really, really happy to be with those fellas. You can find me on iLogic Media and also on Facebook at Chap's Fantasy Chat Sports page. So give me a chat if you like what you hear tonight. Tonight, like I said, we're going to talk about corner infield. we're getting close to draft season, and it's that time where you really have to put rubber road and decide who you like over whom. Tonight I'm going to kind of give you some insight as to how to make good decisions. This is a really wonky year. This is my time of year. I love talking about philosophy and really why player A is more valuable than player B. So again, tonight I'm going to go through first base and third base independently. We're going to talk about tiers and why certain guys are their statistics from last year carry more weight or less weight, right? So we're going to try and figure out basically the whole story behind this holistically is a player's career goes on a bell curve. If they're younger, if they're showing the stats that point towards their statistics ascending, then we're going to value them a little bit more than someone who's maybe up here going on the other side of the age bell curve, if you will. So just real quickly, we might value a little bit more a Pete Alonso who's younger over a Freddie Freeman who's on the other side of it. I'm not saying we do. I'm saying just for an example. But that's what's great, okay, about this, because I say this every year at this time. Everybody's just giving you their best guess. The reason why someone's going to be right at the end of the year and someone's going to be wrong. It's how you get to that point, right? So what am I talking about? I find myself constantly poring over numbers. I love collecting data. I feel like you can learn a lot from your data and make better decisions if you understand it. So you'll find a lot of my thought processes based on that data collection perspective. So when we're going down through these, especially in last year, it was a shortened season. There's a lot of really weird statistics out there that maybe don't make a whole lot of sense. We're going to start to really kind of break down what's real versus what isn't, perception versus reality. And it's not an exact science, especially like I said, in a season last year that was a third of the length of a normal season. It's a little different than in years past. So as we start to go through this, it comes to the point of you start to look at the first thing you have to look at is the depth at the position. First base, for example, I feel is really deep. A lot of people you'll hear say it's shallow. This year, I feel like it's a deeper position. Now, of course, you're going to have two or three guys on the list that are above the others, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who those guys are. But my point is, there are guys that could get comparable numbers in that second, even in the third tier, that you don't have to spend that really high draft capital on. So the point of this exercise is spending your draft capital most wisely and getting bang for your buck. Guys, just want to say, if you're on Facebook and you're posting in the StreamYard, I don't know who you are unless you register. I really appreciate any questions, input, feedback, anything you got, I love to hear it. But either you got to log in or just identify yourself. Let me know who you are. Having the interactions is part of what makes it so much fun. So love to hear questions, comments, what have you. I could post them up here and we could talk about them, as much as you want. Before we get into the questions and the comments and all that stuff, let's start talking about the first base position. To me, yes, that first tier at first base it could be as shallow as 2 and as many as 5, depending on how you view these guys. So I'll break it down ADP wise, and again, I don't go off of ADP. I use it basically as a guide because it is important when you're when you're going up against your competition, because a lot of people don't do this exercise, so they're going to be going straight off of what the Fantasy Pros or CBS Sports or whatever sports line gives you. If you make your own list, it's not going to hurt as much reaching for a player that you value over a player that might be slotted higher in his ADP slot. So that's why it's important to do these exercises. But for ADP's sake, we will keep them in mind. Just so you know, if you value, just for instance, if you value Rhys Hoskins over Max Muncy, just for instance, then knowing that Rhys Hoskins is 70 points lower in his ADP, you can theoretically go up and grab Rhys Hoskins at Max Muncy or Anthony Rizzo's spot in front of him because you value him more. So that's kind of the perspective we're coming from. That's why we make these lists. That's why I like to put the ADPs right beside it, so you really know what the masses are thinking, right? Because again, most fantasy baseball guys are just going to go off of what the magazine tells them or the website tells them. We don't want to do that. That's lazy. First baseman. My first baseman. Chappie's first baseman. Freddie Freeman, number 1. I'll tell you, it's hard to look at this list this year and put anybody other than Freeman on there. Now I know there's a couple guys right behind him that maybe have a little bit more upside, but to have the kind of season that Freddie Freeman had last year, and again, I'm going to give you all a perspective right off the bat here because we forget about stuff, right? We forget about the fact that Freddie Freeman got COVID right before the season started last year. Freddie Freeman almost didn't play last year, guys. And, for him to come back and do what he did, he played in all 60 games. He had his best statistical season of his career. Again, it's shortened. But killed his average. Last year he hit 341. Prior to that, his career high for average is 319. He was on pace for a career high in home runs. Again, you guys know I like to break numbers down in small chunks and see that's all right. So Freddie Freeman picked a heck of a time. He's on pace for 36 homers and 144 RBIs last year. If you project what he did in that stint over a full season, both of those would have been career highs to go with a career high in average. He did this at age 31. Now, is it realistic for him to come back this year and do the same thing? Maybe. Probably not. Does he need to for you to be the leading first baseman? He's probably got to get close, right? But the thing about Freeman is he's such a good hitter. He's the heartbeat of that team. And you look at who he has around him, the young players he has around him, it has to have him feeling rejuvenated. I don't know at 12. So I have him first because he's at 12.3. I think he and Bellinger are about as neck and neck as anybody we're going to talk about tonight. Bellinger just fluctuates more. So Bellinger's average ADP is 15. Freeman's is 12.3. So either way, you're talking about traditional 12-team league, a high second-round pick. Maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower, depending on the league, depending on the circumstance, right? So in comparing those two, sure. Bellinger definitely has the bigger upside. No doubt about it. But the inconsistency for me, now he's on that even year, right? He's on that year where he should have a pretty good year because he didn't have a great one last year. He got hot during the playoffs. We've seen this narrative before. And the other part of Bellinger is, well, two parts of Bellinger. You have the natural speed, which isn't, again, I talked about it last week. The profile at corner infielder is more home runs, more RBIs, less runs, less stolen bases. The middle infield's the opposite, right? So, when you can get that opportunity to gain in a position of weakness at these silos, it's opportune to do so. So in that regard, Bellinger's a little bit more valuable. But you could say the same thing about average, right? And, Freddie Freeman being a career .295 hitter over 11 years, that consistency to me plays a little bit higher than what Bellinger's up and down does. That's why I did. I think Bellinger's a better player. But if you're talking about a first or second round pick, you can't afford to miss, which is why you like the consistency of Freeman. These are the types of things you really need to think about when you're going into your drafts. It really hurts if you flop on one of your first 5 picks. It's hard to recover. I don't care. People say work the waiver wire, yada, yada, yada. You're not picking up a Cody Bellinger. You're not picking up a Freddie Freeman off the waiver wire. I don't care how savvy you are. So, Freddie Freeman over Cody Bellinger by his coach. Last season, he was coming up. Bellinger. Why did he have a down year? Why did he struggle? Well, I feel like Bellinger's kind of in the same mindset as Trevor Bauer, in that he's always trying to work on his craft. He's always trying to improve his swing. He didn't rest on his laurels coming off of an MVP season in 2019 that saw him hit 305, 34 homers, 121 runs, 115 RBIs, and stealing 15 bases. He's versatile. You can play him in the outfield. He plays first. You can play him at corner. And again, the stolen base aspect to me makes him just unique among this position. As much as I say you don't see many corners stealing bases, you really don't see any first baseman stealing bases. So when you have a guy like Bellinger who can steal you 15 bases, that gives you an edge. The difference. His career average is 273 compared to 292 for Freeman. It's a big dip. So again, last year, he struggled. Hit 239, 12 homers. He did pick it up in the second part of the year. He hit 267 in September and October. So what's the difference in the two? I'll tell you what the difference in the two is. The homers and the stolen bases have to come through for Bellinger, whereas for Freeman, you know the average is going to play. You know the runs and the RBIs are going to be consistent. Bellinger has to steal bases to be relevant at this spot. Pete Alonso, number 3. ADP 55. Alonso's one of those guys, 26 years old. It's a perception versus reality thing. His average dropped last year. Again, this is weird because I'm telling you not to put too much faith into the statistics, but in the same regard, we're sitting here talking about batting average and RBIs and runs. With a guy like Alonso, it's more important. It's more important for a number of different reasons. For me, with Alonso, the important part is don't put too much weight into his average because the home runs are still there. You're still going to draft Joey Gallo, even if he hits 239 or 231 rather. You'll live with that if he hits you 53 homers. Sure, you'd like to see 260. 260 puts him in that top category. I'm saying I don't need him to hit 260. I need him to meet me in the middle. I need him to hit 245. If he hits 245 and hits me 50 homers. Now, the dead ball is another issue. I'm not going to talk about that. It's really just hard to tell until, you see what it looks like. So there's two ways of looking at that. That could be an instance where Alonso, one part of the group will say, well, that lessens Alonso's value because he's not going to hit as many homers. The other part of the group will say, well, it adds to his value because he's not going to hit as many homers, but so is everybody else not going to hit as many homers, and he's still going to hit a lot. So I'm not going to get into that. All I'm saying to you is Pete Alonso at 26 years old and that Mets lineup should drive in a ton of runs. I feel like the 120 that he drove in 19 might be a little light. I think he can beat that. And you have to assume this guy's working on his craft. You have to assume that this guy is learning how to hit. It wouldn't surprise me if he went north of 260 this year. So, again, at 55, here's the value about Pete Alonso. At ADP 55, I feel like that's a good value because you think about where he was last year after hitting 53 homers as a rookie. He was a third or fourth round pick. Now you're talking about getting him in the 5th round. I'm interested. Number 6, DJ LeMahieu. I'm not going to get too much into him. Number 4, DJ LeMahieu. He's multi. He's eligible at second. He's eligible at first. I'd probably use him at second base. So we'll talk about him starting next week. But he, and the reason why I wouldn't profile LeMahieu as a first baseman, because he is a 26.8. If you're going to draft LeMahieu that high, you damn well better be putting him at second base. That's too high. I know he had a great average last year. I know he had a really, in some ways, a career year. To me, he fits in better as a second baseman. But that versatility is valuable, right? There are other options at first base that I would go to and shuffle him over there. I don't mind necessarily the 26.8 ADP. I don't want that profile playing at first base, is my point. What's up, Durf? Yes, all of these guys are. I'll tell you what, though, I like Colin Moran a little bit. A little bit. I feel like him playing at first base is going to benefit him. So he's not someone I draft in a traditional 12-team league, but he's someone in a deeper league I would definitely consider. I think he's going to have a good year, Durf. Number 5, this guy, I'll tell you, what a year Jose Abreu had last year. His ADP's 33. So just going to pause real quick, right? Why it's important to make a list. Freddie Freeman, 12.3 ADP. Bellinger, 15 ADP. Alonso, 55 ADP, my number 3 first baseman. LeMahieu, 26.8 ADP. Abreu, 33.3 ADP, my 5th first baseman. Why have I bumped him down? Why do I hate DJ LeMahieu? I don't hate DJ LeMahieu, Jose Abreu. They rhyme. I don't hate Jose Abreu. He had a great year last year. At age 31, Abreu had a career year stateside. I'm not discounting it. I'm really not. If you project, Jose Abreu's stat line last year. If I can read. Of course, I cut the part off that I want. Project it out. I'll come back to a stat line in a minute. Projected out over 60 games last year. Jose Abreu and his 19 home runs would have been a 52 home run pace. His 60 RBIs projects out to 162 RBIs. Call me crazy. I don't see that happening. I don't see either one of those numbers getting hit. Not saying that he's not going to have a good year. Not saying that those aren't viable numbers. What I am saying is a short season, there's no ebbs and flows. What a great lineup, though, right? Tim Anderson, Moncada, Jimenez, Madrigal. What do all those guys have in common? They're young. Abreu's the glue that holds this lineup together. And 31 isn't old by any stretch. It's concerning. It's the age where you have to consider that, right? It's why I bumped him down a little bit. The other part of that is, when you look at Abreu's career stats, something just doesn't mesh up here. He's had a great career. The most homers he's ever hit anywhere, 36. He hit 36 his rookie season in Chicago. He hit 35 once in Cuba, and he's hit 33 twice. So when you look at his 19 homers from last year, and you start doing the math, you can't project that out. 317 for Abreu last year. He had 3-7. What a rookie season Jose Abreu had. 36 homers, 107 runs or RBIs, 80 runs, and a 317 batting average. Hell, he even stole 3 bases. What in the introduction. He set that bar too high almost, right? He hadn't done it. I'll tell you, 2019, he had a really good year. Really good year. 33 homers, 123 RBIs, 284. Can he repeat it? I feel like he's happy in Chicago. I feel like he likes playing around. I feel like he likes playing on a team that's competitive. Fun facts. Abreu's 123 RBIs in 2019 were well more than his previous career high in the majors. He had 107 RBIs his rookie season. He jumped from 107 to 123. Is that repeatable? Abreu's never scored over 100 runs in a major league season. He's only scored over 90 once. Just to mention, I mean, if you want to break fantasy baseball down, it really comes down to most leagues, batting average, home run, runs, RBI, stolen bases. It's important to talk about those things. Now, I'm not saying, so I'll give you the other side of the RBI angle. Abreu's had over 100 RBIs 5 of his 7 stateside years. So that's good, right? But I'm saying to expect what he did in 2019 probably isn't very realistic. Matt Olson, I talked about last week, 84 ADP. Really like him. I wonder about whether, sweet swing, prodigious power, 26, I believe he is. I wonder about whether or not he gets traded. He and Chapman both, but really like those guys. You're talking about a guy. Again, you see, I have him up here in this next tier. This is tier 2, by the way. I feel like when you get past LeMahieu, you're in tier 2. I feel like Freeman, Bellinger, Alonso, and LeMahieu is tier 1. When you get to tier 2, you start having these questions, right? You start having these big gaps and honestly feasible data is what it is. You can't justify that Matt Olson can be a consistent, 260, 270 hitter. You just can't do it. You're guessing, which is fine. We all know Matt Olson's talented, but coming off a 195 season where he hit 14 homers, you're talking Chris Davis numbers with a CH, and that's not good. You can't play that. But here's where it's important to go back and look at the career in its entirety. Even with last year's abysmal year, Olson's a career 245 hitter. He's averaging 40 home runs per every 162 games he's played over a 5-year career now. Averaging. That's significant. I say this often, I know. I don't need Olson to get back up to a 267 hitter. I need him to be better than 195. I need him to get, I need him to get up to around 240. If he gets up to 240 and hits me 40 home runs, I'm ecstatic. Because here's the thing. He hits smack dab in the middle of that lineup. And as long as he and Chapman are there, that lineup is going to be productive. Yeah. This time last year, I remember we were all talking about him. That great year he had as a 25-year-old. Coming into his own, he hit 267, 36 homers after missing 35 games with a broken wrist. He hit 36 homers coming off of a broken wrist. How strong is this kid? We've just forgotten about that? I haven't. I can't. Man, I might be dead wrong on this. But to me, Matt Olson is a 250 hitter with 40 home runs. And I'll take that. I'll take that with my 6th first baseman. Talked about Vlad Guerrero last week, 57 ADP. Lost weight, killing the ball in the Dominican Summer League. I like him there. 22 years old. Max Muncy, 94.5 ADP. Anthony Rizzo, 97.3 ADP. Rhys Hoskins, I like a lot. 165.5. You got to like him in that offense. 245 last year, 10 homers. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what he looks like. Going into his 28th season, he's got to feel more comfortable playing predominantly first base now. There was a 20-point bump in his batting average last year from the year before. Having the stress of playing the outfield going off him, you really got to like him there. What really good power coming off of his bat. Josh Bell's a guy that really intrigues me, and I talked a little bit about him last week as well. He's one of those guys. He's a career 261 hitter. He hit 226 last year. He's just 28 years old. I look for Bell to be rejuvenated by moving to a team that wants to win, that has a serious chance of contending, in his mind anyway. Sure as hell bet on what the Pirates have done. I look for a return. People forget the first half of 2019, Bell was in the MVP discussion. So first half of 2019, 302, 27 homers. He had 84 RBIs in the first half of the season in 2019. 84. Now I'll give you it was a longer 88 games is what it was. So it wasn't quite half. But that's a huge number. And then he fell off. 233, 10 homers, 32 RBIs in the last 55 games. I don't know what to attribute that to. I will say this. I think a lot of it with him has to do with how the team that people forget the Pirates were doing decent that first half of that year. We went to a game that year in Pittsburgh, and there was some excitement in the air. They were competing, they were scrapping, but then the second half they just fell off, and so did Bell's performance. So it'll be interesting to see, the protection too. You look at potentially being protected by Juan Soto and Kyle Schwarber in that lineup, hitting cleanup. You're going to see a lot of pitches. You're going to see a lot of pitches. So I really like Bell in this spot, especially again with his 165 ADP, 167 ADP, excuse me. Sometimes the change of scenery is good, right? Ryan Mountcastle is my 12th first baseman. So there you have your first tier of first baseman. The next tier I'm just going to talk about really quickly. Some of these, so the first one, who's left off? Luke Voit isn't on this list. His ADP is 55, guys. I'm not saying I don't like Luke Voit. I'm saying 55 is way too high, guys. 55 is way too high for a guy who hit his career high in home runs last year at 22. In a game, in a season, in a year that's got a third of the games as normal. That's concerning. That's red flag numero uno, and that's all I need to hear. I'm not saying I don't like Voit. I'm saying I'm not taking him in the 5th round. I'm not doing it. Let someone else do that. You listen to these other names. I would take these guys I'm about to mention to you over him. Maybe not Trey Mancini, just because I don't know what Trey Mancini's, 189 ADP. So you're talking about Trey Mancini and Luke Voit being comparable skill sets, and you're getting them 130 picks later. Luke Voit and Christian Walker being comparable skill sets, 150 picks later. Miguel Sano and Luke Voit, skill sets, 130 picks later. Why would you take Luke Voit in the 5th round when you know the best he can do is what he did for you last year, which is 277 and 22 homers projected out? I mean, obviously, I just find the likelihood of him doing that again really low, really low. Chap's Fantasy Chat, Thursday nights at 8. Draft for Upsides, the network. You can find me at Chap's Fantasy Chat on Twitter. Join Chap's Fantasy Sports Group or Chap's Fantasy Chat Facebook group. Also on iLogic Media. Draft for Upside, First and Goal. Great group of guys. Great group of guys. Thanks to Mark Lawson, Johnny Cole, the Grumpy Bunny, Superman Dude. All you guys have been awesome. iLogic Media is great. Love it. Let's talk about third base. Third base is interesting because it's all over the place. It's all over the place. So here's how I approached it. Risk reward, right? Highest floor. So if I told you pick one, Arenado, Jose Ramirez, Manny Machado, Bregman, and Rendon, who would you pick and why? It's really hard because they're kind of all over the place. Well, Durf, not with the dead ball he doesn't. You're absolutely right. So yeah, not with the dead ball he doesn't. But I will say this again. It's the same thing I said earlier. He's still going to hit more than almost everyone else in the league most years. So whether that's 53 or so, I have Machado as my number one, and you're absolutely right. He's probably a little overrated. But there's some factors you got to take into account here. And the reason why, so 1 and 2 for me are neck and neck. I could have gone either way. I chose Machado. 28 years old. He's a career 280 hitter, averaging 32 homers and 91 RBIs for every 162 games he's played. He should play every day in San Diego. And, in a position where there's no clear-cut number one, he's had a pretty high floor throughout the course of his career. 253, the lowest batting average. He had in 2019, his first year in San Diego. Understandable. Moving leagues, changing coasts, bad team. Things have changed quite a bit. I wonder about his stolen bases. He hasn't stolen double-digit bases since 2018. He's only done it twice in his career. So I feel like that part, you're looking at 7 or 8 stolen bases out of him. So, you'll see a lot of people. I was listening to a podcast today that I got to have Jose Ramirez. We'll get to him in a little bit. Jose Ramirez isn't in my top 2. He's not my top 2. And it's the consistency factor. I put Machado here because I feel like in that offense, he has a real opportunity. His career high in RBIs is only 107. I think he tops that this year. His career high in runs is 105. I think he tops that this year. 32 homers is a lot of homers. He kind of has to get close to that to be worth this pick. I like Machado, but as you can tell, I'm kind of lukewarm on him. The guy, I guess it came down to this. I couldn't put Nolan Arenado as my number 1 third baseman as much as I wanted to. I love Nolan Arenado going into this year. Everybody's talking about the Coors Field, the negative factor there. I don't buy into it, guys. Not 1 minute. It's a misperception that players leave Coors and have deflated offensive numbers. And it's funny, I've listened to it for the last 2 weeks. But that's not why I'm high. So that's not why I'm high on Arenado. I'm high on Arenado. 1, his ADP is 27.8, and that very likely might fall further by the time you draft. He's 29 years old. So he's still in his prime. He played the entire year last year with a torn labrum in his shoulder. I'll say that again. He played the entire year last year with a shoulder injury. He said it hurt to swing up high. So maybe that's an anomaly. Right? Can we get there? Can we get there? I know I can. So, again, I know it's the Coors Field factor, but you also have to think about this. When you're talking about Nolan Arenado, in moving from the NL West to the NL Central, who isn't he facing 18 times a year now? Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, Trevor Power, Hugh Darvish. You're dropping all those guys. What are you getting back? Who are you facing instead? Mitch Keller, Steven Brault, Kyle Hendricks. It's a big difference in pitching quality. Huge difference, right? Now let's talk about before his injury. Home run numbers: 41, 38, 37, 41, 42. RBIs: 118, 110, 130, 133, 130. That's huge numbers. Hell, runs: 102, 104, 100, 116, 97. You just heard me say Jose Abreu has never scored 100 runs, has only scored over 90 once. Abreu did it every year for the last 5 prior to last year. He's 29 years old. He played last year injured. The best part The best part, he was a first-round pick this time last year, guys. He was a first-round pick. You can get him. I was listening to my buddy Joe Pisapia, doing his doing his podcast today. Props to Joe. He just got a big new gig. Congratulations, buddy. They're talking about Arenado going in the 4th round in their labor draft. You're talking about a guy that was the 5th or 6th pick just 1 year ago. He has something you can point to as to why he had a down year. And you're telling me a guy with the last 5 years averaging whatever the hell it is, 40-something homers a year? You're going to discount him like that? Not me, brother. Not me. I'm reading between the tea leaves on this one. I love Nolan Arenado, especially in the 3rd round. If you tell me I got to go up to the 2nd round to get Nolan Arenado, I'm going to do it. If I'm picking at the end of the 2nd round and Arenado's there, not for long. That's too low. He's still too good. I got to move faster. It's 8:45, and I got to eat dinner. But I got some good stuff. Jose Ramirez, the reason why I have him down, first reason, look, Ramirez has been great, especially the last, whatever, year and a half or whatever. He's 28 years old. The reason why I moved him down, he's not a first-round pick. Now, I'll say this, he's a true 5-star player, and the 5th star is his average. He's always going to be able to steal you some bases. But the concerning part for me with Jose Ramirez is the 2018, 2019 stint where he hit 205 for like almost a full season. That's a bit of a concern. Now, he's come out and said, he was trying to work around the shift and, young player. He's still only 28 years old. 2018, 2019, he hit 212 over 132 game stretch, a 672 OPS. That's not good. That's not good. But since then, since the All-Star break of 2019, 110 games, he's hit 307, 52 homers and 25 stolen bases with a slug of 6.64. Guys, I'm not going to get Jose Ramirez with him as my third baseman, obviously. I feel like there's too big of a variance between ceiling and floor for me to reach on a Jose Ramirez in the 1st round, even given the stolen base home run profile that he presents. I would rather spend my draft capital on an ace pitcher or a shortstop that I know is going to steal me some bases. Especially when you have guys, you got 2 more in this first tier for me. The next guy, Anthony Rendon, 286, 9 homers, 29 runs, 31 RBIs last year. So, first off, same thing as like I said with Machado earlier, right? Switch leagues, switch coasts. That's a big switch. But project that out. 29 homers, 91 runs, 97 RBIs. A K to walk rate, projected out, of 97 to 119. Sign me up for some Rendon. I like him in this first tier at 35.8. I feel like he's a pretty good value, especially considering he was a second rounder last year, right? So yeah, I like him there. The last guy in this first tier for me, and I struggle with whether or not he even belongs here. Alex Bregman, 26 years old. That's the thing about Bregman. His ADP is 37. So you're talking about what, a first pick of the 4th round? Um, here's what these guys have in common. They all have elite upside. They've shown they can do it, and they attribute multiple fantasy baseball categories. These guys have all been first or second rounders in the very near past. So what you're getting with Alex Bregman, you're getting a little bit of public enemy number one, right? He's kind of smug. We all remember the pitch tipping scandal he was directly involved with. Had kind of a blah attitude about it. I'm guessing he's probably still going to get hit a bunch this year. But the reason why I've bumped Bregman down, he's all but stopped running. He has not run the last year and a half. He had 0 stolen bases last year. He's got 5 in the last 2. If Bregman doesn't steal bases, he falls out of this tier. So that's why I put him in my top tier, but he's teetering. He's definitely teetering. He's never going to hit 41 homers again. I feel pretty safe in saying that. Yes, Old Elk. Kyle. Could he hit 30? Sure. Is 30 a first-tier third baseman? No. Not for me, he's not. Not with his other statistics, right? Again, I said this going back to last year. I judge every Houston Astro on a case-by-case basis. There is a distinct change for me with Alex Bregman and how he looks. I still think he's a good player. But maybe like Ian Happ good. He's not Francisco Lindor good, like he's shown, right? He's a career 283 hitter. I don't think he reaches that, guys. Again, he's averaging 30 home runs per every 162. I don't think he gets that. Therefore, you hear me. You hear what I'm saying. I've got Bregman here, but I anticipate him falling into that second tier next year. I got to run through these next 3 guys because I got 8 minutes. I got to eat dinner, but I got to talk about these guys. You guys, I love these next 3 players. My draft strategy is centered around these next 3 players. Who are they? It's the second tier. It's the next group of guys that, quite honestly, they're undervalued. Who am I talking about? Rafa Devers, 24 years old. His ADP is 42. I love this kid. You're talking about a player here who, as a 22-year-old, hit on a contending team in the middle of that lineup, hit .311 with 32 homers the last time they played a full season. He stole 8 bases. 115 RBIs as a 22-year-old in Boston. Now, the Red Sox had a rough go last year. Chris Sale was lost for the year. Eduardo Rodriguez couldn't pitch because of COVID complications. Devers' numbers took a bit of a hit. He fell almost 50 points from 311 to 263. But he was on pace for 32 homers, guys. He's on pace for 123 RBIs. That would have been his career high. He had 115 in 2019. I fully expect next year to put Devers in that first tier and put Bregman in that second. Devers has the potential to win a batting crown. I don't think any other player in this category can say that. Now they're talking about him losing a step. They're talking. I don't know that, but what I will say is, and this is another one of those. Alex Cora is back in Boston, and Alex Cora was the manager the year Devers had his best year yet in 2019. These guys have a great working relationship. I look for Devers to have an excellent year, on par with what he did in 2019. Plus 300, plus 30 homers, plus 110 RBIs. And you're getting him in the fourth round. I'll take that every time. Every time. Rafa Devers, number 1 in Tier 2. Number 2 in Tier 2. Number 7 overall, Eugenio Suarez. 29 years old. ADP is 79, guys. He had a crappy year last year. The numbers aren't going to look good. But this is why it's important to look at it from a couple of different lenses. So people forget. He had off-season. So going into 2020, he had off-season surgery on his shoulder. Sorry, these guys start running again. He had off-season. It's his shoulder, I believe. Durf, you know, tell me. There were complications to that. And he didn't recover fully on time. Now, shoulder surgery the year before. Sorry. Sometimes these words just, they're all over the place. So again, 202, not good. 15 homers, not bad. But it's a tough pill to swallow, that 202, right? But take into account two things: the complications from the off-season shoulder surgery, and look at his splits. Splits are important, okay? Because I want to know if a player figured it out. So big picture first. You look at what Suarez has done throughout the last 4 years prior to last year. He's increased his home run pace every year of his professional career. 4, 13, 21, 26, 34, 49. And then last year he had 15. He hit 49 homers in 2019 with a 271 batting average. He's in the same ballpark, predominantly the same people around him for the most part. He had a shoulder surgery that there were complications to. Look at his stats from last year. From July 4th through the first 23 games, Suarez hit 152. 3 homers. That's 23 games. After August 22nd, and this is 235. So you're talking about an 80-point jump in average. 12 homers. So again, if you prorate that 34-game stretch out for the entire year, that's 58 home runs. 58. I'm not saying Suarez is going to hit 58 home runs. I'm saying it's an indicator that once his shoulder got better, it was back to the same old Eugenio Suarez. I love saying that. Eugenio. Eugenio. You have to say it quickly or you start jumbling it. I look for Suarez to bounce back big time this year. I think 40 home runs is a pretty safe estimate. 2018, he hit 283. 2019, he hit 271. I think you're looking at a 260-plus hitter, and I think that's a pretty safe estimate. I love him in the 8th round, 79 ADP. I love any bats that have the kind of power in it that Suarez has. Chapman, 112, 27 years old. Again, I like him. I'm not going to go as deep. He had hip injury last year, really affected his swing. I look for him to return to his numbers of 2019. Moncada, ADP of 88. Bryant of 115. Moustakas of 123. Real quick before I jump off here, there are some rookies here. One that I must say, Durf, I love Cabrian Hayes. What he did last year, I look for him to be a big part of that Pirates future starting this year. I've seen him shoot 3 or 4 times over here in Pittsburgh or in Indianapolis. I love what he brings to the table. His defense is stellar. His bat-to-ball skills are probably the best on that team, and I think he grows into power. At 148.8, I want Cabrian Hayes on my team. 9 o'clock, coming back here at 10 with my buddy Randall, the other angle, OA. We're probably going to talk baseball, but we're also going to talk some college basketball. We're going to talk some NFL. Chap's Fantasy Chat, Thursday nights at 8. Draft for Upsides, the network, thanks to iLogic Media. Find me at Chap's Fantasy Sports Group on Facebook, Chap's Fantasy Chat. That's my handle on Twitter. You can find my sports group at Chap's Fantasy Chat. And again, that's on iLogic Media. Thanks for joining me. Hope you guys have enjoyed the content. I'll see you guys in an hour. I'm going to go eat something real quick. Take care. Good night.